Okay, very good evening to everyone. Good afternoon, good evening. Today is a very special day. We're starting tonight. We're entering an extremely special day, a very holy day. Tonight is Lag BaOmer, Lag LaOmer, the 33rd day of the Omer. And today is an extremely special day because today was the day of the passing of the holy Tana, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. And you'll ask me, since when do we celebrate the day of passing? You know, we make unfortunately, there was a terrible tragedy today in Miron. First time I've heard such a thing. There's so many miracles that happen on an annual basis in Miron. In the tomb of Reb Shimon Bar Yochai, was buried together there with his son Rabbi Elazar. But I'm not sure exactly. I haven't exactly got information exactly what happened, but quite a few people unfortunately have passed away, and a lot of people have been injured. There was some accident which happened there this year. But Reb Shimon Bar Yochai was the greatest student of the 5 students which we mentioned 2 weeks ago of Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva, whose students passed away during this period between Pesach and Shavuot, which for this reason, one of the commentators explained, this is the reason why we actually read Pirkei Avot during this period. And why we don't just read it, we actually study it in the 7 weeks between Pesach and Shavuot. 6 weeks are really, because the first week is Shabbat of Pesach, or Pesach itself. In fact, the Ben Ish Chai actually says famously that when a person celebrates on Lag BaOmer, the celebration for Reb Shimon Bar Yochai, it's not only a celebration of Reb Shimon Bar Yochai, but it's also a celebration of his other 5 students and the Rabbi Akiva, the one who actually taught them. So in fact, he says that those that go to Meron, to Har Meron, the mountain of Meron, also past Tzvat on the way, and Tveria, where Rabbi Akiva is buried, where Meir Baal HaNes is buried. Rabbi Akiva was the teacher of the 5 students. So Meir Baal HaNes, another very famous student, Rabbi Yehuda Bar Ilai, not far away, is buried over there as well. And Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai is obviously the most famous. We asked, why is it that we actually make such a big deal out of it? And the reason is we call it a Hilulah. In fact, we call it Hilulah Rabbah, the great Hilulah. And why is it that we make such a big celebration for Reb Shimon Bar Yochai? So I'll read you what the Arizal says, what Reb Chaim Vital says. Reb Chaim Vital in Shara Kavanot, don't often quote you from Shara Kavanot, but I'll read it for you inside. He says that they used to go every year to Meron to be on the kever, on the tomb of Reb Shimon Bar Yochai and Rabbi Elazar, his son. And they used to eat and drink and make merry. And he says, Reb Chaim Vital says, he saw his teacher, the great Arizal, the holy Arizal, going there with his entire family, and he was there for 3 days. He came specifically from Egypt on a trip to Meron and spent 3 days there. He said the year before that, actually the Arizal came to be with it, to take his 3-year-old child and actually cut his hair on his 3rd birthday, and that's the custom of many, to go to Meron and cut the child's hair on their 3rd birthday. But he brings as follows. Gam He'id Harav Avraham Halevi. But Avraham Halevi also gave testimony. Ki b'shana niskar, on that year, harach gam hu sham. He also went to Meron when the Arizal was there. V'haya noheg lomar b'chol yom birkat tishkon nachem Adonai Eloheinu et Avelei Tzion. And every year, or every time he used to go there, on Lag BaOmer, he used to be very sad. And he used to say, like we say on Tisha B'Av, Nachem Adonai Eloheinu et Avelei Tzion, that God should comfort the mourners of Zion and Jerusalem. V'gam biyoto sham amar Nachem. He says, in that year also, when he was there, such a terrible tragedy, we lost one of the greatest sages and scholars, the author of the Holy Zohar. And he used to say this like prayer of mourning. When he finished praying his Amidah, the Shemona Esrei, the Arizal said, Ki ra'a behakit et Rashbi alav shalom. He saw Reb Shimon Bar Yochai, whatever that means, Omed al Kivro, standing on his grave. V'amar lo emor la'ish hazeh Avraham Halevi. And say to this man, Avraham Halevi, Ki lama amar nachem beyom simchatenu. Why are you saying these prayers of mourning on the day of rejoicing? V'hineh lechen hu yeh b'nechama bekarov. And therefore, if he's saying prayers of mourning, it must be he's connected to that, and that's probably what's going to happen in the future. Says the Reb Chaim Vital, "V'lo yatsa chodesh yamim ad shemet lo ben echad v'kibel alav tanchumim." It was only a month later, within 30 days, that this Rabbi Avraham Halevi's son actually passed away, and he actually had to accept the tanchumim, the mourner's prayer. Says Reb Chaim Vital, why is he telling this such a tragic story? Bit of a sad story. The Katafti calls there, he said, I write all this, Lahorot, to come and teach, Ki yeshorish b'mighag hanizkar. Hazer hanizkar. He said, because there's a very deep and important custom in going to the Rashbi's kever, Reb Shimon Bar Yochai's tomb, ובפרט כי רשב"י עליו השלום הוא מחמישת תלמידיו הגדולים של רבי עקיבא. And especially because Reb Shimon Bar Yochai was one of the greatest of the 5 students of Rabbi Akiva. ולכן זמן שמחתו ביום ל"ג בעומר, and that's why the great day which we rejoice and celebrate is Lag BaOmer. So it's important to recognize that Shimon Bar Yochai in the Zohar actually says that today is a day where one should rejoice. Today is a day that one should be jubilant. Many have the custom to light fires, the fire of the Torah, which surrounded Rashbi, surrounded Shimon Bar Yochai. And there's lots of prayers. There's been many, many stories of great salvation has happened as a result of going to Meron. If you've never been there, please God, once COVID allows, then it's worthwhile to go and pray in the tomb of Shimon Bar Yochai, one of the few tombs which are of the greatest in Eretz Yisrael today. Really, really worthwhile. Over Lag BaOmer in general, in a regular year, there's approximately 500,000 people that go and do pilgrimage to the site of the Shimon Bar Yochai. I had the merit to go there for a few years when I was in Israel. Every year I used to go. It's an incredible feeling. You go into the area where the actual tomb is, like a whole dome, like a synagogue they made out of it now. And in there, he's crying and he's praying, and there's pushing and shoving, and you can't move. You can barely get a needle in. And then you go outside. There's music and there's jumping and there's dancing and there's food and there's drink and there's so much like Simchat Torah. So inside is like Yom Kippur, and outside like Simchat Torah. It's an incredible paradox. You go in, you feel like you're up there, and you go out, and it's like it's all happening. So it's a very special thing. It's definitely something which I highly recommend. Bezrat Hashem, people to go. But if we don't have the opportunity to go to Meron this year, Reb Shimon Bar Yochai guarantees that on this day he will be there for you. And in fact, the Gemara says, "Kedai hu Rabbi Shimon." It's worth to rely on Rabbi Shimon b'shat hadchak. It means even in times of distress, times of trouble, Shimon Bar Yochai is there, and in his merit, we can actually gain so much and tremendous salvation. So a person's got something he's worried about, a person's got any sort of thing which a person needs to get a salvation for. Today is the day. Tonight, tomorrow, light a candle in memory of Reb Shimon Bar Yochai and pray that in the merit of Reb Shimon Bar Yochai, we should merit to have whatever parnasah, briut, nachat, whatever a person needs to be able to pray for. If a person can't go to Meron, I think it's very apropos. There's actually many different Sfarim, different books of ways what to study, because the Gemara says that if a person studies the words of the Chacham, the words of the person who passed away, his Torah, then that actually is as if that Chacham is speaking. So I want to go through, first of all, a short Mishnah. It's actually this week's Perek Dalet. And then I want to go back to another Mishnah in Perek Gimel. So let me just start off with a Mishnah about Reb Shimon Bar Yochai. Just give you a very brief background of what happened. What's the story of Shimon Bar Yochai? Who was he? Where did he come from?
באיזה משנה?
Perek Dalet, Mishnah Yud Zayin. Chapter 4, Mishnah 17. Just a very brief intro as to who Reb Shimon Bar Yochai was. Reb Shimon Bar Yochai was the legendary. Reb Shimon Bar Yochai was a student of Rabbi Akiva, like we mentioned, 4th generation Tana. And Reb Shimon Bar Yochai has many different statements throughout the Gemara. As we mentioned, the author of the Zohar. And the most famous story is the Gemara in Shabbat. The Gemara in Shabbat says, the Talmud says, the story of Shimon, who had this kind of undisguised animosity towards the Romans, the occupiers of the land of Israel. And eventually he spoke out what he felt was the reality. The Romans building all sorts of bridges and stuff, and they're doing it for their own, for their own right. And the Romans heard and decided they're going to get back at him and they're going to kill him. So he was told that his life's under threat. So he's going to go, and he goes with his son Rabbi Lazar, and he hides in a cave, and he ends up hiding there for 12 years. The Gemara says he goes out, trouble happens, and he gets sent back in. Essentially, he's 13 years in the cave. How did he survive? Well, in terms of clothes, so he went in, and his son, with the clothes that he came in with. But because of the rough area he's in this cave, I think they know where the cave is today. Tradition tells us where the cave is. And the Reb Shimon Bar Yochai was there with his son, and every day what he would do is he would remove his clothes and like bury himself in the sand, and he would study. In fact, they say Eliyahu Navi came to teach him all the secrets of the Torah. And then when it came to tefillah and it came to pray, then he would put on his clothes. That way he would look after the clothes, and the clothes wouldn't be completely tatty. A miracle happened, and a stream miraculously appeared over there, and a carob tree also appeared, and that's how he sustained himself over the 12, 13 years. I'm not sure it's the best recipe for a healthy stomach, but that's what he had for 13 years, breakfast, lunch, and supper, and that's how he survived. Shimon Bar Yochai became known for his saintliness, and essentially became the great Reb Shimon Bar Yochai, who gave us essentially Jewish mysticism. The concept of Kabbalah really is based primarily around the Zohar, and that is really, he was the one that brought it into this world and brought the awareness to this world, and that's why he's so great. On Sunday, please God, we'll be having a special class on Jewish mysticism then and now, the background of Shimon Bar Yochai, where he came in, what he did for us then, what relevance does it have today, together with Rabbi Beitelman. Please go at 7:30. You can look at on the emails or on the website for further details. So first of all, we'll start off with a Mishnah, Pirkei Avot. This week is chapter 4. We're just over 3 weeks away from Shavuot, and we are up to chapter 4, Mishnah Yud Zayin, Rabbi Shimon Omer. Rabbi Shimon says, the great Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, Zekuto, Tagen Alel. Shelosha ketarim hem. There are 3 types of crowns. Keter Torah, the crown of the Torah. V'keter kehuna, the crown of priesthood. V'keter malchut, and the crown of kingship. Finishes off the Mishnah. V'keter shem tov ole al gabehen. But the crown of a good name suppresses them all. So what does it mean from a simple level? Reb Shimon Bar Yochai says there are 3 crowns. What are they? It means there are 3 crowns of honor, essentially. One is Keter Torah, Talmid Chacham, person who is got the crown of Torah, studied. The second crown is the crown of priesthood, certain status. A Kohen, this week's parasha, Kohen Gadol. Yes, Shlomo.
Sorry to interrupt. Really apologize. I'm trying to follow up Perek Daled Mishnah Yud Zayin, but it's not what you're saying. Do I have a different copy?
There's a bit of a problem with Pirkei Avot that in different prints, the Mishnayot are broken down differently.
Oh.
So it might be just before or just after. What do you have? What are you reading?
I have Perek Daled, hold on, Yud Zayin. רגע, זה about קורת רוח. עדיפה, better one.
Who's the author of the Mishnah? How does it start?
הוא היה אומר, I don't have, זה יפה שעה אחת בתשובה, ומעשים טובים בעולם הזה, מכל חיי העולם הבא. But, and the one before that is העולם
הבא. It's much before that. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 Mishnayot before that.
Okay. אני לא רואה את זה.
Just a little bit before that. Do you have Reb Nehorai Omer, Reb Golel Mkom Torah, Reb Yanai Omer?
I'll find it. Okay, sorry to interrupt.
It's 5 Mishnayot before that. Okay, so like you said, they're different in, for some reason, I'm not sure why, but the Mishnayot are broken down in different ways. Either way, so we have 3 crowns, one of Torah, the honor of the Torah, the honor of priesthood, Kohen Gadol, mentioned, we're now learning in Daf Yomi, the Gemara in Yuma, which elaborates about the service of Yom Kippur. And mentioned that the Josephus, the journalist, actually in his chronicles actually has a record that the Kohen Gadol at the time wasn't just some sort of prestigious position just within the Jewish world, but it was a very prestigious position, all around. In fact, many people in the second Bet Mikdash, the corruption there was amongst the Jewish people, unfortunately, was so much so that there were actually over 300 Kohanim Gedolim in a period of 420 years. So, it means literally almost every year they were recyclable. They would actually go into the Bet Mikdash on Yom Kippur, not make it out of the Holy of Holies, and they would have to get a new Kohen Gadol. So that's just because of the corruption, because the Kohen Gadol had such political flack with the Roman Empire. He could actually levy taxes, and there was all sorts going on. But either way, from a practical level, there are 3 crowns: Keter Torah, Keter Kehuna, and Keter Malchut. Obviously, the crown of kingship is an obvious one to what it is. V'keter Shem Tov ole al gabehen, says the Mishnah. Says Rav Shimon Bar Yochai, but you should know of all the crowns, which perhaps are so great and so worthy and such, so honorable. However, Keter Shem Tov, the crown of a good name, suppresses them all. And the simple reason is because priesthood, kingship, and Torah is something which is essentially not necessarily something which a person actually strove for. These are things which a person got perhaps by default. If a person is a king, because his father was a king, or he comes from that sort of lineage. A person is a Kohen because his father was a Kohen. The famous joke go. So the person came to the rabbi, he says, "Rabbi, I want to be a Kohen." He says, why do you want to be a Kohen? He says, well, I think it's a very worthy thing. So he says to him, have you got any background with Kohanim? He says, yeah, sure. He said, listen, my father's a Kohen. My grandfather's a Kohen. I also want to be a Kohen. It's all right, sign the check over here and I'll make you a Kohen as well. I'm joking. Okay. So, but the idea of Kohuna, it's not something you can pay for, right? Kohuna is, if your father's a Kohen, you can be Kohen. If you're not, you're not. The same thing with Malchut, and the same thing with Talmid Chacham. Essentially, you can attain, obviously Torah is a little bit different, but essentially these 3 crowns are things which people not necessarily is necessarily attainable from for a regular person, as opposed to a Keter Shem Tov, opposed to the crown of a good name. A person who acquires that, a person has to work their whole life for a good name. How many times are there stories of people that had such a good name and the end of their life, they screwed up and that was the end of it. So really, the power of a good name is so great. In fact, Rav Shimon Bar Yochai actually says it's greater than the Holy Ark. Person's got a good name, Oleh al Gabehen. It's above and beyond everything else. And the other way they explain it is that all these three ideas of Keter Torah, crown of Torah, the crown of kingship, and the crown of priesthood are also not worth anything alone. You can be a great king, but if you're not a great guy, nobody's going to really like you. Be a great Kohen, do all the service properly, but you're not a great guy, don't have a good name, it's not going to help you. Same thing with Torah. You can be a great scholar and you know all the different parts of all the books, but if you don't have a good name, it's not really worth anything. So therefore, Keter Shem Tov Oleh al Gabehen. It's not like there's 3 crowns plus 1. It's 3 crowns, and above all those 3 is the crown of a good name, because the crown of a good name is, as Shlomo HaMelech says in Mishle, Tov Shem Mishemen Tov. Play on words. Greater, better is a good name than good oil. Essentially, a good name is so important to be able to have that, because that really is what we've been talking about the past few weeks. Ben Adam lechavero is so much more important than Ben Adam lemakom, because the way a person acts with his fellow. We spoke about sensitivity last week. We spoke about the students of Rebbe Kiva the week before, and that's today, Lag BaOmer, where the students of Rebbe Kiva stopped dying. This is what we have, the Haftarech Kamocha, that a person who is Me'urav Ma'beriot, we said Mishnah, chapter 6, Mishnah 6, Perek Vav, Mishnah Vav, we said there are 48 things which a person needs to acquire the Torah. And one of them is to be Me'urav Ma'beriot, to be a people's person, to be someone who's there for each other, someone who's Noseh Be'ol Im Chavero, someone who recognizes somebody else's pain and is able to be there for them, and to be compassionate, to be empathetic. And that is really what we are trying to work on during this period before Shavuot, and to really, strive to become better people and to work on our character traits, to be able to really get to the position of attaining and acquiring the Torah on the great day of Shavuot. So today I just really want to, it was just an idea I want to mention, because I want to mention the words of Reb Shimon Bar Yochai. But today I want to focus on one Mishnah, Perek Gimel, chapter 3. Shlomo Adel, this is going to be a new one. Mishnah Chet, Mishnah 8. The Mishnah says as follows. Rabbi Elazar Ish Bar Tota Omer. Rabbi Elazar Ish Bar Tota from Bar Tota says. So again, just a bit of practical history. Who was this Rabbi Elazar? Rabbi Elazar was Ben Yehuda, was a Talmud 3rd generation, was a colleague of Rabbi Akiva, student of Rabbi Yoshua. He was a very famously, Talmud talks about this in Ta'anit, he very famously he gave with such magnitude that the charity collectors actually hid from him when they used to see him. Usually it's the other way around. They're usually running after the people that give the money. But he was so, such an open pocket that people felt bad for him. And they were literally, it was literally his last penny. I'm not going to go into the halachic ramifications, whether a person's allowed to do that or not, or whether it's correct or not. But either way, this is what the Talmud reports. The Talmud says he once met a charity collector who was collecting for his daughter. And he bumps into Rabbi Elazar Ish Bar Tota. He sees him around the corner, and he quickly runs to the other side of the road. And when Rabbi Elazar saw him, that he's trying to run away, so he accosts him, and he forces him to reveal the cause of what he's actually doing. And he says, listen, I'm collecting for the wedding of some orphans, whatever. And he says, listen, they come first. I'm going to give all the money that I have in my pocket. And he gave him all the money. But this was the magnitude of Rabbi Elazar's compassion and his greatness in literally giving up to the last penny, all for the cause of tzedakah. So the Mishnah says as follows: Ten lo mishelo. Give him from his own. Why? She'ata v'shelcha shelo. For you and your possessions are his. V'chen b'David hu omer. And so too it says by David HaMelech, Ki mimecha hakol umiyadecha natanu lach. For everything is from you, and from your own hand we have given you. So let's just try and understand what's this Mishnah talking about. What does it mean from a simplistic level, and perhaps go a little bit further on what's going on. Ten lo mishelo. So anyone got any ideas what this means? Ten lo mishelo. Give him from his own. Why? She'ata v'shelcha shelo. For you and your possessions are his. Anyone have any idea what this Mishnah is talking about? Any suggestions?
It's the relationship with God.
That what?
Everything you have is from God. מה ששלך שלו, זה ממנו.
So what does it mean to give him? Give him what? What do you want to give him?
Your property.
Give all your
Money.
property to God?
We came with nothing to this world.
Right.
If we take credit for everything that we have to ourselves, then we put God aside. Everything we have is from Shamayim.
Right. So and how does that come out then? So what's it referring to? So what do you want to give him? Yes, Dan.
I'm sort of disagree with that, because if we remember the story of Yaakov, and when he had the dream, and what he did, he told God, he says, if you will be my God, I will give you a tenth of whatever I have, whatever I possess, not my whole 100%, a tenth. So there is some recognition that we can't give all our property, but there's no doubt that we can't forgive by not giving of our property when there's a need. But I don't agree that the whole amount is to be given. So I'm not sure if we're talking about the personal property that one has that has to give up on what we're talking about here.
So okay, so I think you both raised very good points. Shlomo in the general understanding, and Dan's got a very valid point. So what is it, what the Mishnah means? Ten lo mishelo, give him from his own, obviously referring to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. She'ata v'shelcha shelo, for you and your possessions are his. So one explanation in Midrash Shmuel is that Jews throughout the generations were able to find the strength of character to offer themselves to God in martyrdom. Yeah, Jews were ready to die al Kiddush Hashem, to die to sanctify God's name, right? And they were inspired by the principle that at certain points, God calls upon people to make the ultimate sacrifice. As we know, halachically, there are three cardinal sins which a person has to die for if a person is Jewish. One is avodah zarah. A person says, you bow down to this idol or I'll kill you. A person has to be killed. Kill this person, murder the second one. Kill this person or I'll kill you. A person has to be killed. And the last one is adultery. Commit this adulterous sin or you'll be killed. Then those three are what we know as the Gimel Averot Chamurot, three cardinal sins, and a person has to give themselves up, Al Kiddush Hashem. Many Jews throughout generations were not just gassed at the camps, but were burnt at the stake, all Al Kiddush Hashem, because they did a mitzvah, because I think I mentioned once in this class, I got, about 2 years ago, someone came to my office and says, Rabbi, I'm looking into my lineage, and I've done a bit of research, and he actually pulled up a document which he managed to find in the Spanish records from all the way back from 500 years ago, from the Spanish Inquisition. And he showed me the papers. It's like big script writing. I think it was in red. I think I still got it somewhere in my email. And it says, he got it translated from Spanish to English, and it says over there that the crime, this person was actually burnt at the stake, his great-great-grandfather, and the crime of this person, that he's Jewish, right? That's, They had meticulous records, the Spaniards, back in the day. Anyway, so many people, unfortunately, many of our ancestors were burnt at the stake, died al Kiddush Hashem, because simply they were Jewish. By the way, it's for this reason that the Torah, Jewish law, actually prohibits suicide. Why is that? Because ten lo mishelo, we don't own our bodies. We don't own our lives. I would say, contrary to Western society, that we have the right to do what we want with our bodies. We have the right to do what we want with our lives. It's not true. HaKadosh Baruch Hu, God gave us our body for safekeeping. He gave us our body, which encompasses our neshama, our soul, to do Torah mitzvot in this world. We don't have a right to do what we want with our body. We don't have a right to do what we want and just destroy the body, literally physically, and definitely not for suicide, because God gave us life for safekeeping. It's entrusted to us. In fact, it's to be employed, to be invested according to the will of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. But man has no right to misappropriately or willingly relinquish his life for because the person doesn't feel whatever it is. So that's just a very important idea from a simplistic level. Ten lo mishelo, give him from his own. She'ata v'shelcha shelo, for you and your possessions are his, because you, she'ata, your whole being is actually from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Very, very vital and important message from a very simplistic level. In fact, I think it's something which we should teach the younger generation, the importance of life and the importance that God has given us, incredible lease on life. In fact, I was studying this week in a certain program, the famous 12-step program, and I had this whole discussion backwards and forwards with some non-Jews about philosophical discussion, and I asked them, they were talking about what the definition. One of the 12 steps is the belief in God, that God can forgive your sins and all that. And I asked them, I challenged them, I said, where does God come into all of this? Because they were deciding, what does God mean? And according to every person, I said, but why is this spiritual? And they all agreed, there's a bigger picture over here. There's something which a person can understand, that when a person's in a certain stage where is an alcoholic, or a person's got some sort of connection to some sort of addiction, whatever it is, if a person realizes and recognizes that a person is beyond, there's something much broader, there's something much bigger than just him or her in this world, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu, God gave us our bodies to be able to do a greater job, to do something bigger, to do something which is so much deeper. I think one of the beautiful things, we're talking again about Shim Bar Yochai today with the Zohar, with Kabbalah. I remember in Kollel when I was studying in Israel. So a rabbi once came into the Kollel and gave us a class, simplistic level of Kabbalah, what does it mean? And, and he says, people like to get in, people who are great scholars. Kabbalah is a very deep understanding of the world, a deeper understanding of how the world works, how the inner workings of the architecture of the world works. A person who is a great scholar can try and delve into that when a person gets to a certain stage. It's not for the Kabbalah center. That's not what Kabbalah is, right? This is Jewish mysticism, is a very, very high level of delving into a certain understanding on a very high level. But from a simplistic level, what does it mean to us? And like I mentioned, we'll elaborate a little bit more, please God, on Sunday with Rabbi Beitelman at 7:30. But the idea of every action which we do in this world has so many ramifications. We all understand that as the world evolves and as science evolves, and we have a deeper and greater understanding of what is happening in atoms and quantum physics, and how every single thing, every living organism has got so much to it. And the more and more we break it down, the more we understand how deep this world works. The same thing is with Kabbalah. When we make a bracha, when we make a blessing in this world, it's not Every word means something, and every word will make an effect on the universe. People talk about tikkun olam. You know, people often forget, they talk about tikkun olam in a vacuum. There's no such thing as tikkun olam. You know, before I came to Canada, I'll be honest with you, I never heard of tikkun olam. I know there's one thing. There's tikkun olam b'malchut shaddai. That's what we say in Alenu Shabeach. Letaken olam b'malchut shaddai. What does that mean? To repair the world of God, in the kingship of God. You can't just repair the world in a vacuum. That's not going to get you very far. If you repair the world in a broader sense, it's so much bigger. There's so much more to it. Yes, it can be the environment. It can be in so many different aspects. Why? Because everything HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave us, we have to take care of. We have to take care of our bodies, take care of our teeth, take care of our exercise. We've got to, because we want to serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu. We have to take care of the world, because if Hashem gave us a universe which is so beautiful, we have to look after it and not mess it up. But it's all in the spheres of the Malchut Shaddai, in the world of godliness. That is really what Kabbalah is, where you make a blessing and you say, Baruch Atah Hashem, blessed are you God, Elokeinu Melech Haolam, Master of the universe, King of the world, Shehakol Niyah B'dvaro, everything was made by His word. Then we don't understand the effects it has on the upper spheres. And we talk about the Esser Sefirot and all these ideas, maybe above and beyond us perhaps. But to understand on a simplistic level that there are levels and things happening beyond just the immediate effect. It's like the ripples which are happening. I think that's a very important idea. Again, ten lo mishelo, she'ata v'shelcha shelo. The concept of a person has to have self-esteem. Because we are a chelek Elokam imal, because God bestowed us with a soul, and we are incredible beings. We have a piece of God inside of us. That piece of God is wrapped up in a body, which is given to us for safekeeping. And therefore, we must look after our bodies. And therefore, we have no right to commit suicide because it's not ours. And therefore, we have no right to squander our bodies and mess it up, even to damage our bodies. This is a very, very simplistic understanding of the Mishnah, but so very important. She'ata v'shelcha shelo, because this, everything we have is given to us in as a safeguard from God. Rabbeinu Yonah says another explanation. What does it mean? Ten lo mishelo, she'ata v'shelcha shelo. Rabbeinu Yonah says that all our resources, all the resources we have, all the finances we have, all the money that we make, all the talents that we have, are all bestowed to us for safekeeping. Where he says it, Pikadon hu beyado. It is entrusted to us for safekeeping. Says Rabbeinu Yonah that there's one difference between when a person gives something to somebody else. When a person gives something to someone else to guard and to safekeep, is a person have a right to actually use it? Of course not. I give you my Rolex watch. I don't have a Rolex watch, but if I give you my Rolex watch I don't want one either, don't worry. If I give you my Rolex watch to safekeep, are you going to start, you're going to start wearing it, showing everyone? No, you keep it in the safe. You look after it. Says Rabbeinu Yonah, there's a difference because God gave us talents. God gave us resources. God gave us finances, but He gave us the opportunity to use what we need, dei tzrachav, whatever we need to use. God says, no problem. Great deal. But what you don't need, you've just been entrusted. And that you give to other people. Ten lo mishelo she'ata, for you. Every talent that you have, and everything that you have, v'shelcha, and everything which you own, is shel, all from God. So use what you need, but the rest gives to everybody else. Develop system for society in Shlomo.
I get that and I agree with that, but it can be a little bit problematic if it's taken out of balance. So you want people to have ambition, You want people to advance and proceed and learn and grow. But if we tell them what you have is what been allocated to you because that's all you need, it is a problem. So there is a balance.
So 2 points to what you're saying. Number one is, let's see if your question will be answered by the end of the class. We have 15 minutes to be able to deal with that. And secondly, Yahadut, Judaism is about balance. Everything's always about balance. The Rambam famously says, there's only 2 things the Rambam says in midot, in character traits, which a person should not be balanced. Rambam says 2 character traits which a person should be extreme. Other than that, very famously, the Rambam says in the Pirkei Avot, person should be on the Shvil HaZahav, the golden middle path. Because Yahadut is about balance. It's incredible. I'll tell you the 2 midot, which the Rambam says is, no, what are they? 2 midot should be the opposite. No, that's Derech Eretz is very broad.
Okay.
Too broad, specific. I'll tell you what they are. Number 1, he says kas, anger. He's archek me'akas. Other extreme. There's no like, sometimes I'm angry, sometimes I'm not. I'll be sometimes out, sometimes not. I'll be in the middle. If it's really bad, I'll be angry. If it's not bad, says the Rambam, kas, you go the opposite extreme. Never get angry. Incredible thing to do. It's I think a life work when it comes to kas, right? We all, everybody loses it at a certain point or a certain stage. Something we have to work on. Incredible. It reminded me of a story of a very great rabbi. I forgot his name. He once came home and he sees his daughter on the 3rd floor of his house, standing on the ledge of the window, 7-year-old, whatever it was, they were playing. I thought it was fun to stand on the ledge, and she's about to fall. And he doesn't know what to do for himself. And he says, if he screams, she's going to get a shock and she's going to fall. If he doesn't, tries to be thing, then, who knows, it's going to impact. He calmly told her, Sarah, please turn around and go back inside. She calmly turns around, goes back inside, he goes upstairs and gives her a punishment, right? But he was very calm, and because he was calm, he saved her life. Many years later, she had grown up. And I can't remember what the scenario was, but she opened the cupboard and a cat jumped out or something, and she screamed and she got really, thing. And he said to her, you have to control yourself because you are only here today because when you were on that ledge, I was able to control myself. Incredible thing. I mean, how many of us say, Henry, how could you with it? Right? Person has to be level-headed. It's very, very, definitely a life work, lifelong journey. Kas, and the other one the Rambam says is ga'ava, is haughtiness. Person's got to be the opposite of haughtiness, humble. Don't say, I'll be a little bit haughty, a little bit, sometimes humble, sometimes haughty. And says go to one extreme, the extreme of humility. That's another incredible midah. But otherwise, says the Rambam, everything in Yahadut is balance. In fact, as we know, coming up now, the Parashat of Naso, the reason why the Nazir, the Nazareth, who is so great, and it says, Nezer Elokav al Rosho, he really has this crown of this Nazirut. It's like he abstained from alcohol for 30 days, a minimum of 30 days. Or for however long he became a Nazir. Yet he has to bring a korban. He has to bring a sacrifice because he is a sinner. And why is that? And Rambam explains, because in as much as you're abstaining, but God does not want people to be extremists. And therefore, you're right, you did something very, very extreme, because perhaps maybe he was going too much to a certain degree. And so to be able to manage that, he has to go to the opposite extreme. But then, and that way, you bend a piece of metal, you want to get it right, so you bend it the other way. But now you're back to the middle. But to be an extremist in whatever way, even for good, is also not good. coming back, so that was to your point, Shlomo, but we'll come back to you in a few minutes, hopefully. Okay, we don't have much time left. We're just going to try and cover a few more ideas. A person says that if the Rav Hirsch says, Shamshon Fol Hirsch says that if a person understands and appreciates that whatever he has, whatever she has, is a God-given talent or a God-given gift, a person will come to haughtiness. It's not mine. It doesn't belong to me. I think I once asked, we've spoken about this before in the Shiur, if you ask Moshe Rabbeinu, do you believe you are the greatest Anav mankind has ever seen? You are the greatest, most humble person mankind has ever seen. You ask that to Moshe Rabbeinu, what will he answer? Dan, you're nodding your head.
No, he said he was not. In fact, we have an example in Torah with the little letter.
Right? We know Moshe is humble. I'm asking if you direct this question to Moshe Rabbeinu, are you the most humble man that's ever been in the history of mankind?
So he says, I don't know.
I don't know. So I'll tell you that the Rambam, Maimonides, will call Moshe Rabbeinu in Apikoros a heretic if he says, I don't know.
Right.
If he says no, he will be a heretic. Why? Because one of the Shlosh Esrei Ikarim, one of the 13 principles of faith, is that Moshe Rabbeinu is Anav B'Kol Adam, is the most humble person there ever was. So if you direct this question, what would be his answer? He says yes, he's haughty. He says no, he's a liar. What do we do? I don't know, also not, because one of the 13 principles of faith is stuck.
But Moshe Rabbeinu was before the 13 articles of faith.
Moshe Rabbeinu had to know what the Yud Gimel Ikarim were. This is Ikarei HaTorah. It wasn't made up by the Rambam. This is what Torah's philosophy is.
Yeah.
We're trying to bring out a point, right? So I once heard from one of my Rabbanim, he said a beautiful idea. He said, if you appreciate, he said, you know what Moshe Rabbeinu will answer? He said, yes. What? I thought you're supposed to be humble. He said, no. He said, it's not from me. It's a gift from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Anything that we have, a person could be so talented, but to recognize one's talent is just as important as anything else. Because if a person recognizes and at the same time knows that this talent comes from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, is a God-bestowed talent, the person won't be haughty as a result. In fact, I think that Bishal Salanti used to say, great father of the Musa movement, he said, Oi, he told it to Shlomo a few times, Oi, if you don't know your weak points. But Oi vey, if you don't know your strong points. Like the person has to know. Person's self-esteem comes from understanding what their talents are. Person can only develop in life if they know what their talents are. The person, no, I'm a nobody, I'm deferring to everybody else, let people walk over me like a doormat. That's not how a person's supposed to be. Kadosh Baruch Hu gave you, you're someone, and God gave you those talents. If you don't use those talents, you're actually taking a gift that Kadosh Baruch Hu gave you and doing something which is incorrect, because he gave them to you to actually be used. But don't let it get to your head, because guess what? You did nothing to make that talent. It's a talent which was given to you by God for a purpose, so use it. And as one of the rabbis used to say, he said, that talent, I have an even greater responsibility now, because now that I recognize I have that talent as a gift from God, that means I have an obligation to use it. So if I didn't have any talent, I'm here. I don't have to do anything. If I've got this talent and I don't use it, I'm worse off. Incredible idea. Ruach Chaim Volozhin used to say that ten lo mishelo is referring to tzedakah. That what? God is giving you so much. He's asking for a percentage. He's asking for a percentage back. He's not giving you health, wealth, life, luxuries. I'm asking you back a little bit. Tzedakah. Give me 10% back. I'll give you 100%, you give me 10%. Is that a good deal? 90% return. Fantastic. So says the Ruach Chaim, it all belongs to him anyway. So he's giving you, and he says, I want 10% back. Can't give him back. And that's why it's so important to give tzedakah. In fact, many people give 10% already when they get their check from when it comes in. They already separate it into a maaser account of masrot. That way, when someone comes collecting, it's not like I have to take it out of this money and then give it to someone. No, it was never yours in the first place. That's how a person should look at tzedakah. And that way, it's just so much easier to give away when you appreciate it was never yours. It's given to you to pass on. 90% you can keep. Shlomo, you asked about the 90%. It's 90%. 10%. The two more ideas in the last 5 minutes. Ben Ish Chai says it's referring to Limud Torah. It's referring to the study of Torah. That what? Specifically, Ben Ish Chai famously says, Limud Torah on Shabbat is the greatest time for studying Torah. Why is that? He says the whole week, person's busy, person's toiling, person's working. It's difficult. You know, you try have a class here, have a class there. Something, at least we shouldn't go through the week without any Torah. But at least Shabbat comes, so we have relaxed. 10 lo mishelo. Give him a little bit of time for Torah study, to educate oneself in what we have. Ben Ish Chai very famously says there's 1 hour of Shabbat learning. He makes a whole calculation. It's worth 1,000 hours of Torah learning during the week. Imagine. 1 hour of Torah learning on Shabbat is worth 1,000 hours of the whole week. Says the Ben Ish Chai, just give back something. Hashem gave you the whole week. Hashem gave you everything you need. And then just educate yourself a little bit. 10 lo mishelo. There's one other nice idea brought down in Shulchan Aruch, in Choshen Mishpat. The Gemara says also, it comes from the Gemara, that someone is hakotev nechasav leben echad, someone who writes, writes on the will. He's giving all his money. Shlomo, this is your question. Gives all his money for one son. All the other children don't get anything. What's the halacha? Says the Gemara, lo asahu ela apotropos. He must be what he made him into a manager. It doesn't make sense. The guy's got 10 kids, and he's giving all his money, the entire estate, to one son. What's that? It must mean he wants him to become the manager to actually give it out to everybody else. That's halakha. So a person, Hashem created some people with wealth, some people who are poor, some people with talents, some people with different talents. Hashem gave you that talent. Okay. So if he gave you so much talent or so much wealth or so much whatever it is, then it's clearly he's not giving it to one son for nothing. He's giving it to one son to be the manager, to give it out to everybody else. So it says, Rabbi Yonah, take what you need for yourself, but that balance, Shlomo, is to be there to give it to everybody else, because Hashem didn't give it to you for nothing. And yes, you can be a Baal Tzedakah, you can be a Baal Chesed, you can be someone who strives to give more Tzedakah, who works so hard to be able to give more money to people, to help more people, or who works so hard to be able to help people with their talents. It's an incredible way of looking at life that, we're never going to worry about giving to somebody else. Never worry about, he's taking so much from me, she's taking so much from me. It's nothing to do with that. It's what we have and what we need, Hashem gives us. And the rest is to actually give off to other people. But not the rest is like 90% me, or 99.9% me, and then 1% somebody else. Give what you're supposed to give. I think that Moshe Feinstein used to say, Maaser is not only with money. Maaser is also with time. A person can do chesed, kindness with somebody else, just by listening. We spoke last week about sensitivities. You can listen to someone, have a conversation, pick up the phone to someone who's not even in a crisis. But how many of us have, we have things on our minds. We have weights on our hearts, and everybody's got it. Everyone's got a package. Nobody can say, no, I'm The person says, I am thing, you already know they've got problems. Just listen. Person can just sit and listen, be empathetic with them. Can do greatness, can do wonders. I'm going to finish off with one last idea. Amnon Yitzchak was once giving he's a famous guy who does a lot of outreach for the secular people in Israel. And he was once on stage. So he called up a guy and he says to him, I want to give you a present. You okay with that? Sure. Big, blurry Israeli. He says, I want to give you a box of chocolates. All right, accept it? Sure. Takes the box of chocolates. He's about to go out on stage. He's got a big smile on his face. Hey, Adoni, shniya. So 1 second. So what? Come back. He said, I want one favor. I said, sure. He said, can you give me back one chocolate? I said, sure. He said, why would you want to give me? He said, what do you mean? You give me a whole box of chocolates, I can't give you one? I said, okay. He said, give him a box of chocolates, 6 rows of 4, 24 chocolates. Must give you one. Sure, give him one. He says, HaKadosh Baruch gives us 24 hours a day. He asked for one back. Pray Shachrit, Pcha, Arvi, study a little bit. Something. Give you everything. Ask for a little bit back. One chocolate, 1 hour. Brings to humility. All this, ten lo mishelo, shata v'shelcha shelo. Everything we have can bring us to humility because when we appreciate that everything we have is from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and He's just asking to give back to His other children, then it won't be so hard for us. And with that, we are not giving back to HaKadosh Baruch Hu everything. We're just giving back what He gave us. Okay, we'll stop there. Have a good night, everyone.
Right, and thank you.
I think we should continue with this after Shavuot.